Hello, I'm Elizabeth Press, founder of D3M Labs, and I'm here today with Sina Yazdenmehr, who is an IT security consultant and co-organizer of BSides Berlin. Sina, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi, Elizabeth. Thanks for having me. I started my career about 12 years ago in IT security. I started more in technical fields like security engineering, penetration testing, and then slowly, I got more into consulting up to this date that I'm mainly doing management consulting and IT security topics.
The digital workplace, as we know it today, has gotten so vendor dependent from cloud to meeting applications, etc. Basic resiliency has become a problem and a challenge for many organizations.
I mean, digitalization itself, I would say it's a good thing because it's faster, cheaper, easier to scale. But at the same time, it brings a couple of challenges to companies, and one of them is resiliency. What happened is that if those digital systems don't work anymore, people easily cannot just work, right? For example, if your email doesn't work, if your online meeting application doesn't work, you cannot do your daily work. If your cloud environment suddenly is not available anymore, that means your company cannot operate because your application, your systems are based in that. So the main problem is that businesses are heavily dependent on those vendors and digitalized systems without having a good exit strategy. If any of those vendors, those systems don't work anymore, or the service is not available to them anymore, their operation is going to be challenged and maybe the company just cannot operate.
For the first 2 decades of this century, digitalization, being a modern company basically, meant going to a public cloud. But this goes beyond just the cloud. It goes to most applications that are often core to the business. And now people, after 2.5 decades of this culture of digitalization, have vendor lock-in.
The first thing I will recommend is to have your backups, backup of your data, backup of your process, backup of your application. Even, for example, if your online meeting application doesn't work, what you're going to do, you're going to pick up a phone and call your clients or operate on something different. The second thing is that as of now, when you're onboarding a new application or a new vendor, have your exit strategy. You should consider if tomorrow morning this system, this vendor is not available to you anymore, what is going to be the impact to your business, how you're going to recover from that unavailability. And of course, because many companies, as you said, have been digitalizing their system for years now, and most of them, unfortunately, they're already locked into many different systems and vendors. It's not easy, or it's time consuming to have an exit strategy for all their systems. So what I would recommend, and what I think is realistic actually, is that you go through all the vendors you have, all the systems you're using, you see what is the mission critical to your business. So if this system goes down, your business cannot run anymore. Then you start making exit strategy and backup plan for those systems that your business is heavily dependent on them and you cannot operate. Once you're done with that mission critical system, if you still have resources, budget, and time, then you can go to the next level of system. But first, identify what you're heavily dependent on and you cannot operate without that. Have an exit strategy, backup plan, and then go to the next systems.
And there are many problems that are related to daily ways of working in many companies that are the core to why data leakages happen and why breaches happen. What are some of these daily ways of working and common practices that lead to such issues?
I would say that's also kind of vendor or system locked in, because there are a lot of legacy system laying around in different businesses, especially the big ones, that they cannot easily switch to a new system or another system. So Those systems usually they have a lot of security issues. They have unpatched vulnerabilities that someone can easily find and exploit them, or because they are very old systems, they cannot be integrated with modern authentication and authorization system, like for example with an SSO, or they cannot have multi-factor authentication. So a lot of local users, a lot of weak passwords, a lot of accounts that, for example, an employee leaves the company, but they forget to disable that account because it's not integrated with the centralized authentication system, and nobody knows who's going to use that account, from where, for what purposes, how many active users are still in those legacy systems that should be deactivated. And of course, a lot of mistakes that are not intentional that can happen. For example, a developer accidentally putting an API key to a public GitHub repository that someone can access that. A storage bucket that accidentally exposed to the internet, and everybody can just read that data because of a simple misconfiguration that can happen. So a small mistakes that can make big problems easily avoidable, just because, some systems are not good in configuration.
And a lot of the problems that you've just described are a symptom of tool-based innovation, and that has been a real persistent issue, I think, in the first 2 decades of digitalization, that a lot of digitalization projects were, wow, there's this really cool vendor. Let's do this with this tool. And yeah, then it caused a lot of, I think, the issues that you've talked about. But what are the core mindset shifts that need to happen when people are now looking at innovation, digitalization, just making their workplace more efficient and scalable?
Of course, I mean, there was this mindset of move fast, break things, but you should also be careful that your own business doesn't break because you're moving too fast. And usually there has been this mindset that we're going to fix it later, we're going to check it later, we're good for now. And, it's pile up just a stack of different things that might break every day. So I understand from a business perspective that sometimes you just need to move fast, but you should also consider those items. When you start working with a new vendor, when you start onboarding a new system or digitalize a part of your process, you should always have an exit strategy and consider if tomorrow morning this application doesn't work, if you cannot use this vendor for whatever reason, maybe even the vendor goes bankrupt and they're not in the business anymore, how you're going to operate, how it's going to impact your business. Do you have enough resources, financial resources, human resources, and time to replace that with another alternative? Do you have an alternative? You should have all of that planned as a part of your exit strategy, and make sure if one of your vendors, one of your system is not available for whatever reason, you can recover from that in a rational and justified effort.
And now we're living in a world of, for example, advanced persistent threats, very complicated geopolitics, as well as this growing concern amongst European companies that they are reliant on mostly US vendors. What is Europe doing to react to these challenges?
Many of new regulations, for example, DORA, they emphasizes on operational resiliency. They want to be sure that you can operate if any or all, many of your vendors cannot service you anymore, which is very good. And they usually go to many levels of this vendor chain or supplier chain. For example, you work with company A works with company B and C, and they want to know if any of those systems or companies in the chain cannot work anymore, cannot do business anymore, how it's going to impact your business, and if you're ready to recover from that, if you have a plan to deal with that situation. This is a very good initiative. This is the right direction to go. But of course, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of resources and time for companies to go through the process to really get resilience, to get their supply chain under control and make sure they have a plan. It's time consuming. It takes time until we have some results, but I would say it's good that it has started and it's going towards the right direction.